Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. I am Daniel Mercer, 34. I lifted the black bill folder with a dry hand. Then Maya cut the air with one hard line. "Stop calling me your wife," she said. Her voice scraped the glass like a sharp ring. Laughter from our table snapped like brittle ice. The gold pin blinked under the pendant light. Every head turned toward the check like a magnet. I held my card against the leather and breath heat. The folder's edge pinched my palm and felt slick. Perfume drifted off her dress with a jasmine bite. A slice of cake sagged on a white plate. How do you answer a knife made of words? "Did you hear me?" she said, eyes steady. A phone camera clicked near the tall champagne tower. I set the folder down beside a folded napkin. The cloth felt damp from a spill and cold. I watched her ring catch blue light like a warning. "It is just a joke," I said. The DJ faded the track and raised another beat. Maya sipped a spritzer and left a coral print. Her glass sweated onto a coaster with a crown. Her stare stayed hard while the song climbed higher. "Not a joke tonight," she said. Her friend Lena toyed with a silver straw, silently. I reached for the pen and felt a quiver. The nib scratched the receipt like a tiny saw. I signed my name while everyone watched the line. The server hovered with a tray and a tight smile. Citrus peel smelled bitter near the copper bar. I slid my card under the paper and paused. The leather hinge creaked like an old book. Maya tapped her phone and looked through me. "Congratulations, beautiful," someone shouted near the cake. Sparklers hissed and sprayed light across the glasses. I moved the knife away from the frosting cliff. The steel felt cold and clean in my hand. Her laugh landed short and left a bruise. "Why tonight?" I asked, voice low. A speaker thumped behind my shoulder like a heart. She dabbed her lip with a linen square. The napkin picked up lipstick like a flag. She didn't blink, and the room breathed smoke. "Because I asked before," she said. Ice rattled in a bucket beside the wine. I watched the bubbles climb her glass like ants. A candle guttered and spit wax on the table. My chest tightened while the music tried to dance. Lena leaned closer and smelled like mint gum. She adjusted a gold bangle and looked away. The bill folder sat heavy near the steak knife. I kept my hand flat against the leather spine. No one ever teaches you how to stand there. "Let's cut the cake," the host called. A camera flash cracked bright against the ceiling. Maya lifted the server and smiled with small teeth. The silver handle was warm from the candle heat. Her eyes stayed cool while the crowd cheered. "Smile for me," the photographer said. His lens glinted like a dark marble under neon. I wrapped an arm around her bare shoulder. Her skin felt smooth and distant like glass. The shutter snapped and sealed us in pretend light. "You look tense," my sister whispered. Her bracelet jingled near her glass with a soft ring. I set the cake server down on the platter. The icing smelled like vanilla fields after rain. I nodded once and tasted iron on my tongue. "Speech," someone yelled, banging a spoon. Cutlery clattered against plates with nervous music. Maya took the mic and brushed her hair back. The cord snaked across the marble like a vine. I watched her inhale like a diver before dark water. "Thank you for loving me loud," she said. Her voice floated smooth over the soft lights. She raised her glass toward the tall centerpiece. Roses leaned heavy and dripped dew on the cloth. The word wife hung unspoken like smoke. I picked up the folded receipt and scanned numbers. The ink shone wet and bled into the fibers. Heat from the candle warmed my knuckles slowly. My card waited beside the empty breadbasket. I signed again because my first line shook. "Everything good?" the server asked. His bow tie gleamed like a small night sky. I nodded and pushed the folder toward him. The leather kissed the table with a dull click. He whisked it away like a secret. Maya stepped close and smelled like crushed orange. She set her glass down near the salt cellar. Her hand grazed my sleeve and lingered a beat. The fabric rasped under her ring like sand. Her eyes said later while her lips smiled now. "Dance with me," she said. The floor lights pulsed blue and then red. I took her hand and felt bones and heat. The crowd parted around the mirrored column. We moved like actors trapped in a loop. Her laugh scattered across the speakers like beads. I caught a glimpse of the bill at the bar. The server tucked it into a drawer with care. A brass bell chimed once from the service door. My stomach dropped like an elevator before dawn. "Stop calling me your wife," she repeated. The words slid under the music like a blade. I squeezed her fingers and counted the beats. Her nails traced a warning on my palm. I nodded because any word would break. The song ended on a long synth hush. Applause flared and crashed against the glass wall. I stepped back and fixed my collar slowly. The starch scratched my neck like dry paper. Maya turned away and raised her glass high. I watched the candles tremble beside the cake stand. Sugar roses glowed under the pendant cones. A fork rested alone on a small saucer. The metal held a smear of white like frost. Everything felt staged except the bruise in my chest. "After," she said, not turning her head. Her bracelet caught light and flashed like a siren. I gathered the gift envelopes into a stack. The paper edges rasped against my fingertips. After sounded like a locked door with no key. The exit door slammed and the hallway echoed like steel. Her heels ticked on tile while I balanced the cake box. Bleach burned the air near a red mop bucket. A green exit sign buzzed over the brass handle. We walked fast because the silence bit hard. "Keys," she said, eyes on the elevator light. I dug into my jacket and felt coins and grit. The key fob clicked and flashed weak red. Perfume trailed behind her like warm smoke. We stepped in as the cables groaned. The elevator lurched and hummed like an old fridge. I held the box against my chest for steadiness. Cold metal pressed my back near the control panel. A security camera blinked above a cracked mirror. Her reflection looked away and watched numbers drop. "Talk later," she said straight into the glass. I shifted my grip and felt sugar against cardboard. Her clutch swung and tapped the railing twice. I smelled citrus from her wrist at close range. Later sounded thin inside that humming box. Rain started hard against the lobby's glass doors. Neon smeared across puddles like spilled paint. I adjusted my collar and felt the stiff edges. A bell cart leaned near a plant with dusty leaves. I pushed the door and caught the night's chill. "Ride or walk?" I asked, hand on my phone. A car horn clipped the curb and then faded. She checked her screen and nodded at the street. Her breath ghosted in the light from a taxi. We moved fast while the cake tilted dangerously. The driver cracked the window and let rain whisper. Pine air freshener swung from the mirror like bait. I set the box on my knees and steadied it. Streetlight washed her face pale inside the sedan. She stared outside and counted seconds with blinks. "Why now?" I asked, voice low and even. She traced lines on the fog glass and waited. The seatbelt rubbed my neck like sandpaper. My phone buzzed against my thigh like a bee. She kept tracing circles that never closed. "Not here," she said, watching the wipers crawl. The rubber squealed against the glass with each swing. She opened her clutch and nudged a second phone. The screen flashed white and then dimmed. I caught the logo before the leather snapped shut. The cab stopped and the meter clicked like a metronome. Rain hammered the roof and blurred the world. I handed bills to the tray with damp fingers. The driver's receipt curled under the dashboard light. We stepped out and took the stairs two at a time. The hallway smelled like wet carpet and hot dust. Our neighbor's TV thumped bass behind a thin door. I fumbled the key and scraped the lock plate. The handle stuck before it turned with a clack. She exhaled like she had been holding fire. Inside, the fridge hummed and the room held darkness. I bumped the switch and warm light spread slow. Water dripped from my cuffs onto the hardwood. A ceramic bowl waited on the counter like a mouth. She set the clutch down without a sound. "Kitchen," she said, already moving past the couch. The fabric brushed my knee with a dry rasp. I placed the cake box near the wooden board. Vanilla rose from the seams like soft thunder. Her back stayed straight while her shoulders tightened. "Drink?" I asked, reaching for the heavy tumbler. Ice cracked in the tray with a brittle pop. She shook her head and lifted the linen towel. The towel felt rough and smelled faintly of bleach. She wiped water from the knife like it mattered. "What do you want to know?" she asked. Her voice settled flat under the yellow pendant. I set the tumbler down beside the salt jar. Glass clinked against ceramic and echoed. I wanted more than was safe to ask. A drawer stuck and then jerked open with grit. Loose batteries rolled and clicked into the corner. A thin envelope lay under a rubber band. The paper's edge was sharp against my thumb. Blue ink bled through like a bruise. "What is this?" I asked, tapping the corner. She watched the kettle start with a red glow. Steam whispered from the spout like a secret. Her hand hovered over a chipped mug. She did not take the envelope from me. "Paperwork," she said, turning the flame lower. The burner ticked and smelled faintly of gas. I held the envelope up to the light. A seal shaped like a small crown glimmered. My pulse counted each tick like a warning. "Open it," I said, voice smaller than planned. She lifted the mug and tested the heat. The rim clicked against the counter once. Tea leaves darkened the water like smoke. She did not reach for the paper. My phone lit the marble with a cold square. A message from my sister pulsed and faded. I placed the phone face down beside a spoon. Metal kissed stone and rang a thin note. The room felt crowded by things unsaid. "After tonight," she said, eyes on the steam. The kettle clicked off and sighed into silence. I slipped the envelope under the cutting board. The wood warmed my fingers with a steady thrum. After crept closer like rain under a door. She set the mug down and leaned against the sink. Water beads clung to the steel like tiny suns. I touched the board and felt the grain lift. The cake knife gleamed beside a stack of plates. We stood still while the clock chewed seconds. "Do you trust me?" she asked, barely pushing air. I caught the scent of orange from her sleeve. The faucet dripped and marked time in silver dots. I stared at the second phone in her clutch. Trust felt heavier than that small device. "Yes," I said, though the word burned. She reached for the clutch and pulled a zipper. Teeth rasped together like a saw-through rope. She slid the phone deeper and shut the flap. Her eyes dared me to pull it back out. "Tomorrow," she said, moving toward the hallway. What creaked under her step like a whisper. I stacked plates and felt porcelain cool my skin. The pendant light hummed above the sugar roses. Tomorrow hung there like a blade over glass. The window rattled and the city breathed damp air. Headlights swept the wall and painted bright bands. I moved the envelope to the drawer's back. Paper rasped against wood with a dry scratch. The seal's shadow stayed in my mind like smoke. "Turn off the light," she said from the dark. Her voice came soft from the bedroom door. I touched the switch and felt the ridge click. The kitchen dropped into blue from the street. I stood there and watched the outline of the knife. The glass door fought me and then slammed behind. Fluorescent light hummed over gray tiles and damp coats. A dispenser spit a ticket into my palm. The paper felt thin and warm from the machine. Number 67 blinked red like a warning. A copier whined near a rack of plastic trays. Old coffee smell drifted from a chipped mug. I sat on a hard chair beside a potted fern. The fern's leaves shivered under the air vent. My number crept closer like a tired train. 67, the speaker crackled above the clock. I stood too fast and bumped a metal post. The chain rattled against the base with a ring. A jar of pens waited beside a glass pane. My hand shook as I reached the window. "I need our record checked," I said. The clerk slid a plastic tray toward my side. Her keyboard clicked sharp under pale monitor light. I placed my license beside a folded photo. The glass cooled my fingertips like winter rain. "Spell the last name," the clerk said. I spelled it slow while the fan thrummed. The stapler sat open like a tiny jaw. She typed with 2 fingers and steady eyes. The screen washed blue across her lenses. "Any other spellings?" she asked, glancing up. Dust swirled in the light like tiny snow. I set my phone beside the tray for notes. The case felt rubbery and sticky from sweat. I shook my head because there were none. "Date of ceremony," the clerk said. Her voice sounded flat against the glass. A calendar lay under her wrist like a map. I gave the month and the day and year. She typed and frowned at a gray box. "Do you have an application number?" she asked. The printer sang a short tune behind her. Paper curled out and smelled like warm toner. I glanced at the empty slot in my wallet. The number lived somewhere I didn't reach yet. "It might be under a temporary license," I said. A stapled packet slid on the desk behind. She checked a ledger with clean white tabs. Her ring clicked once on the laminated page. I watched her fingers stop at a blank line. I see a license issued, the clerk said. The words fell heavy under the buzzing lights. A thin folder rested beside the card reader. She pulled it close and breathed out slow. My chest tightened like string around a package. It was never returned for recording, she said. The sentence landed cold and stayed there. She held up a slip stamped void after 30 days. The red letters glared like brake lights in fog. I felt my jaw shift against its hinge. What does that mean? I asked. The fan squealed and then settled to a hum. She tapped the slip with a capped pin. The cap made a soft thud on the counter. Her eyes didn't look away from the stamp. It means no certificate exists, the clerk said. Her tone softened under the fluorescent wash. A stack of manila envelopes leaned in a box. She turned the slip so I could read it. My pulse counted each red letter like steps. Can I fix this today? I asked. The keyboard rattled like loose change on plastic. She printed an instruction sheet with checkboxes. The sheet slid forward with a dry hiss. Her finger rested on a line about affidavits. You would need both parties present, she said. The printer thumped and stopped near her elbow. She handed me a clear sleeve for the page. The plastic snagged my knuckle with a scratch. Her mouth pressed thin while she waited. I called before I could think straight. The ringtone buzzed loud against the glass pane. My phone warmed my ear like a small stove. Traffic roared outside and bled through the door. Her line rang and then folded into silence. Try again later, the clerk said. Her voice softened like felt under the noise. She slid a business card across the tray. The cardstock scraped the glass with a whisper. I pocketed it and felt its sharp edge. Can I get proof of this search? I asked. The copier blinked green and then flashed bright. She stamped a receipt and signed a small box. The ink smelled metallic and fresh as rain. I held the paper like it might bite. Good luck, the clerk said, eyes careful. A wall clock ticked hard over the water cooler. I folded the sheet into thirds on the counter. The crease ran straight like a careful scar. Her nod followed me toward the door. Outside, heat bounced off the concrete steps. Sunlight hit the chrome railing like fire. A bus coughed smoke that tasted like pennies. I tucked the receipt inside a black notebook. My throat felt dry while the city kept shouting. A food cart sizzled near a dented trash can. Onions smoked sweet under a steel lid. I bought a bottle of water from a crate. Cold ran down my wrist and soaked my cuff. The cap snapped like a shot under my thumb. My sister texted and the phone sparked light. Her message pulsed under a photo of sparklers. I slid the screen dark with one slow swipe. A bus bench burned the back of my legs. I stared at the stamp until it blurred. Call me, I typed, then erased the words. A pigeon clacked across the metal grate nearby. I rubbed the edge of the receipt against skin. Paper rasped and left a pale line like chalk. The line vanished when I breathed on it. I stepped into a print shop across the street. Toner hung in the air like dusty heat. A cutter blade gleamed beside a stack of cardstock. The clerk nodded and fed my sheet through. The machine chirped and spit duplicates like tickets. Need an envelope? The clerk asked. His voice carried over a rattling vent. I picked a brown one from a plastic bin. The flap felt gritty and rough on my tongue. I sealed the proof like a trapped moth. The doorbell jingled and the street roared back. Sun flared on a windshield and through knives. I slipped the envelope into my inner pocket. Fabric dragged across the paper with a scrape. Every step home sounded louder than before. A cyclist whistled past and clipped my sleeve. Rubber hissed on asphalt near a white van. I reached the corner and waited at the light. The crosswalk sign blinked a stern white man. My heartbeat matched the metronome of the beep. I pictured the wooden board on our counter. Warm kitchen light poured over stainless edges. The cake knife gleamed inside that quiet room. My palm found the envelope through the cloth. I walked faster because the clock inside ticked. The lock turned stiff and the door side open. Streetlights spilled a gray stripe across the rug. My jacket scratched my neck while I reached inside. The envelope pressed warm against my ribs. I closed the door and held my breath for courage. The fridge hummed like distant traffic in winter. I set the envelope on the wooden board. The grain felt raised under my damp fingers. A knife gleamed beside a stack of plates. I waited for footsteps that didn't come. Kitchen, I called, voice low and hard. The word bounced off tile and stainless steel. Keys clinked from the hallway like soft coins. She stepped in and brushed rain from her hair. Her eyes went to the envelope like magnets. "What is that?" she asked. Her whisper thinned under the pendant light. I slid the paper closer to the salt cellar. The glass shaker glittered like frost under yellow. I watched her throat move once and stop. "Proof," I said, thumb on the fold. The fridge gasket squeaked when the door flexed. She set her clutch near the fruit bowl slowly. Leather creaked like a seat in an old car. My pulse climbed while her face stayed still. "Tea," she said, reaching for the kettle. Metal thumped the burner and caught blue flame. Steam fogged the hood with a soft cloud. She lifted a chipped mug with a steady hand. I didn't move because she was buying seconds. "Open it," I said, touching the corner. The paper rasped under my nail like sand. Her mouth pressed thin behind a quiet breath. Water hissed while the kettle gathered pressure. She nodded once like a tiny surrender. She slid the slip out and read fast. The stamp bled red under the warm lamp. Her fingers left faint prints on the ink. The pendant hummed and cast a shaky halo. The silence trembled like glass in a train. "This is complicated," she said, eyes lifted. The kettle clicked off and left a hush. She set the slip beside the wooden spoon. Wood knocked stone and made a soft knock. My hand tightened around the counter's cold edge. "Complicated how?" I asked, voice scratching. The faucet dripped and counted in slow beats. She reached into the clutch and pulled a phone. The screen flashed white like a match in dark. A name bannered the top before she hit it. "Work only," she said, tucking it back. I caught the smell of orange from her sleeve. A coaster slid across marble with a dry scuff. She set the mug down and didn't drink. The steam climbed like a warning no one heeds. "Who keeps you single at work?" I asked. My palm felt the cool lip of the counter. The clock ticked above the stove like nails. She opened a drawer and pulled a slim folder. Paper sighed like leaves when she flipped it. "Investors want clean stories," she said. Her voice steadied under the hood's dull hum. A glossy one-pager flashed charts and logos. The colored bars glowed under the pendant cone. "Single fits the pitch better than tangled vows." "Who told you that?" I asked. My knuckles brushed the knife and felt cold. She laid a business card on the board. Raised letters caught light like tiny mirrors. Ethan Rowe stared up in neat serif. "He runs the launch," she said. The fridge kicked louder and then settled low. She tapped the card once with a careful nail. I smelled ink and paper like a new book. Her eyes dared me to say his name again. "When did he start running us?" I asked. The mug's rim kissed the counter with a chime. She wiped a ring of steam with a towel. Cotton dragged across marble with a sigh. Her silence answered louder than any word. "Say it," I said, fingers on the folder. I felt the page edges bite into skin. She looked at the window, glowing city blue. Streetlight painted her cheek like a pale blade. Her shoulders rose and fell and finally settled. "He advised the pause," she said. The burner ticked once like a small spark. She slid a second sheet across the board. The header read image and donor alignment. My name was missing from every neat line. "Optics over truth," I said. The spoon clinked when I pushed it away. Steam fogged my glasses and blurred her face. The tea smelled sharp like cut grass and rain. She watched me wipe lenses with shaky cloth. "Only for the quarter," she said. The pendant flickered and caught again in gold. She traced the folder's edge with one finger. Paper rasped like a match that wouldn't light. I felt each word lodge under my ribs. "Ethan called during the party," she said. Her voice dropped and scraped the tile. The second phone lit the clutch with a glow. A faint buzz crawled across the marble. She didn't touch it while it buzzed again. "Answer it," I said, throat dry. The phone stopped and left a cold quiet. I slid the card back across the board. Embossed letters scratched my fingertip like grit. I wanted a face to hold accountable. "He thinks donors fear controversy," she said. She lifted the mug and didn't drink still. Tea cooled and filmed along the surface. I smelled stale citrus from the kettle spout. Her ring tapped porcelain like a metronome. "I'm not controversy," I said. The fridge motor droned like a long complaint. I pressed my palm to the counter seam. Stone felt unforgiving under my skin. My breath fogged the pendant for a second. "You are a question mark," she said. Her eyes shone wet under the kitchen light. She set the mug down near the sugar jar. Ceramic sighed against marble and settled. The word mark burned hotter than question. "Did he ask you to lie?" I asked. A police siren hooped faintly through the window. She picked at the towel and rolled a corner. Cotton frayed and left a pale thread. Her answer came slow like a tired train. "He asked me to wait," she said. The hood fan rattled and then went quiet. She pulled a small card from her pocket. A ring appraisal glimmered under glossy laminate. My stomach turned while the price shone back. "Why insure now?" I asked, eyes narrowed. The card cut my thumb when I flipped it. Tea cooled to skin temperature in the mug. I smelled sugar and vanilla from the cake box. She watched the knife like it might speak. "Because events need certainty," she said. The pendant hummed over the board's bright grain. She nudged the folder to a safe corner. Paper edges aligned with the salt cellar. I heard certainty and thought cage. "Where does this leave me?" I asked. The clock ticked and ticked above the stove. I placed the receipt copy on the board. Ink gleamed under the cone like wet tar. Her face changed like a door unlatched. "Not outside," she said, softer now. She reached and touched the envelope edge. The texture rasped under her fingertip. Light caught the gold band on her hand. The band looked heavier than before. "Prove it tomorrow," I said. My voice surprised me with steadiness. I pushed the card back toward the clutch. Leather creaked and swallowed the rectangle hole. The room felt smaller while the proof stared up. She slipped off her ring without a word. Metal clicked against the counter like a coin. Steam thinned in the light and drifted away. She placed the band beside the knife carefully. We both watched it shine like a warning. Wind shoved the rooftop door and rattled the metal frame. Neon bled across wet tables and made the ice glow. I slid onto a high stool and gripped the rail. The steel felt slick and cold under my hand. My phone buzzed against the wood like a trapped bug. Up here, a text flashed, then dimmed to black. I tucked the phone beside the cocktail napkin. Rain's smell rode the air with a touch of smoke. A silver lighter clicked open near the corner fire pit. A man watched the city like it owed him. He approached without hurry and placed the lighter down. Cologne drifted sharp like pepper over wet brick. His jacket brushed my sleeve with a dry whisper. The lighter threw a small flame into the wind. He cupped it and smiled like he expected thanks. "You picked the view," I said. He checked his watch and faced the skyline. The flame vanished and left a faint heat. He rested one hand on the glass guardrail. I waited because the pause held teeth. "I prefer high ground," he said. He tapped the lighter against the table twice. The clicks carried under the low speakers like ticks. A cut crystal glass winked near his elbow. He looked at me like I was a chart. "What do you want?" I asked. He slid a brushed steel card holder forward. The metal squeaked over stone like a blade. Light hit the logo and splashed into my eyes. I opened it because the moment demanded proof. A folded document sat inside like a trap. The paper felt heavy and smooth in my fingers. Rain dotted the edge and bled the watermark. Headings gleamed under the strip lights like teeth. He watched my face while I traced the lines. "It is a prenup draft," he said. He took the lighter and rolled it in thought. The wheel scratched like sand across nickel. A thin pen lay beside his untouched drink. I read dates that ended in November. "What is the rush?" I asked. Wind pushed smoke sideways from the corner torches. He flicked the pen clip and smiled without warmth. Ice cracked in his glass, though he never sipped. He leaned in so I could smell cedar. "Donors need certainty before the gala," he said. He tapped the margin and nudged the timeline. The pen left a tiny dot like a mark. I slid the paper back across the table. The dot stared at me like a fly. "You think this fixes optics," I said. Bass thumped below our feet like a dull engine. He placed a black envelope between our hands. The seal gleamed under neon like fresh oil. He waited until I touched the corner. "Open it," he said. Traffic roared far below like ocean surf. I broke the seal and breathed glue and ink. crisp bill showed through a bank wrapper. A contract summary wrote on top like dust. "What is that?" I asked. He lifted his glass and finally took a sip. The ice clinked against cut crystal like small bells. Rain misted my hair and cooled my neck. He put the glass down and cleared his throat. "An NDA and a retainer," he said. He pushed the envelope closer with a pin. Leather on my belt squeaked when I shifted. The strip lights painted his cheek a hard blue. He smiled like the number would buy air. "You think I am for sale," I said. He shrugged once and pocketed the lighter. The pocket zipper rasped loud in the wind. A coaster stuck to the glass and then fell. He watched it slide and didn't bend. "Everyone is for rent sometimes," he said. He wiped water from the railing with his sleeve. Fabric dragged on glass with a rough hiss. He set a photo on the table, carefully. Flash glare showed us at the cake with smiles. "Security cameras love stories," he said. He slid another photo under the first one. The second showed a door and a timeline. Red digits glowed near a brass handle. He had receipts for moments I wanted to forget. "You followed us," I said. The speaker coughed and then steadied to a beat. He adjusted his cuff and checked his phone. Screen light painted his palm like milk. He nodded like this was normal business. "Investors monitor risk," he said. He tucked the photos back into a folder. The tab rasped against cardboard as it closed. A rain bead traveled down the glass barrier. He watched it fall like it proved a point. "She told you to wait," I said. He smiled at the word like a private joke. The wind lifted a napkin and flapped it hard. I pinned it with 2 fingers against stone. He spoke softly, so I had to lean. "She needs someone decisive," he said. His voice landed warm despite the cold air. He turned the folder and revealed a letterhead. A donor list glowed under the waterproof sleeve. He tapped one name that made my stomach drop. "You courted my family," I said. My mouth tasted metal while I stared. He nodded once and kept his hand still. A single raindrop hit the donor name. It spread like a bruise under plastic. "She respects ambition," he said. He raised the glass again and swallowed slow. The scent of bourbon drifted with vanilla heat. He placed the empty glass beside the envelope. The envelope waited like a patient animal. "I'm not your problem," I said. He tilted his empty glass and studied the bottom. Light fractured through the cut base like shards. He set it down with a clean, deliberate click. His eyes carried a message he did not say. "Sign and step aside," he said. He nudged the pen so it kissed my knuckle. The touch felt colder than the wind itself. A gust rattled the torch and spit sparks. He smiled like the decision was simple. "Or what?" I asked. He folded the envelope flap with perfect care. Paper crinkled like a dry leaf in winter. He slid a small card across as punctuation. The card read "Event Liaison" in delicate print. "Or you can attend and clap," he said. He angled the card under the strip lights. The letters shimmered and then went still. He watched my hands like they were chess pieces. He waited for my move without blinking. "I will not clap," I said. My fingers pressed the stone until they ached. Wind stung my eyes and blurred the skyline. The napkin tore under my ring finger. A strip of paper stuck like a bandage. "You will choose quiet," he said. He pocketed the pen and stood with ease. His chair scraped the stone with a soft bark. He lifted the lighter and waited once. The flame bloomed briefly like a dare. He walked away and left bourbon in the air. The fire pit crackled and spat at the wind. I stared at the envelope and felt its gravity. Neon smeared across the glass like spilled mercury. I slipped the photos inside my coat and stood. The ballroom doors swung wide and cold air rushed in. Strings climbed the walls while chandeliers burned white light. Lily perfume mixed with champagne and pricked my nose. I palmed the velvet box and scanned the stage. Her smile held steady above a glass lectern, unbreakable. I set the envelope on a small cocktail table. The black seal caught light and gleamed like oil. A server brushed past with flutes that chimed softly. Cold sweat crept under my collar and burned. I kept the box clamped in my fist. Decision. She stepped off stage and found me near the palms. The mic popped behind her and hissed with feedback. "We talk after," she said. I held the velvet box between us like a weight. "Take the bill tonight," I said. I did not move. Her breath carried citrus while she reached. The pin in her hand flashed under the sconces. "Please not here," she said. I slid the black envelope into her clutch. Paper scratched leather and left a mean sound. I placed my ring on a silver tray near candles. Heat licked my knuckles and made the metal sting. Applause swelled behind us and shook the glasses. "I'm done paying," I said. The doors boomed shut and drowned the strings.